when a demon masquerades as a dead woman and manipulates a father into destroying everything he loves. The film opens with a man named Richard traveling with his daughter Emmy to a region in Canada. Richard is a hardworking man who is always busy with his job. Despite his constant busyness, Richard feels at ease knowing that his wife, Sarah, is always at home taking care of Emmy, who has a developmental condition. However, their peaceful life changes drastically when tragedy strikes. Sarah dies in a car accident. Richard is forced to face the bitter reality that he must now take care of Emmy on his own. Although unsure whether he can handle everything without Sarah's help, Richard promises himself that he will do his best for his daughter. Losing Sarah in the accident compels Richard to take full responsibility for raising and caring for Emmy alone. Once a man entirely focused on his work, Richard now has to learn from the beginning how to care for his daughter, who needs special attention. A few days after Sarah's funeral, Richard finds a letter written by Sarah before she passed away. In the letter, Sarah expresses her wish that Emmy be cared for by her acquaintance in Canada named Sandra, a woman whom Sarah completely trusts with children. Sandra has provided excellent care for other children, and Sarah is confident that she will give the same love and attention to Emmy. Sarah explains that in Canada, Emmy will undergo a series of well-planned therapies designed by a team of medical professionals. These treatments are not only meant to maintain Emmy's physical health, but also to improve her communication skills. Sarah hopes deeply that with intensive therapy and Sandra's full care, Emmy's condition will show significant progress. In her letter, Sarah also reveals her most heartfelt wish that one day Emmy will be able to call Richard and Sarah Dad and Mom. Sarah notes how precious that moment would be for them, and she hopes with all her heart that the care in Canada will bring a major positive change to Emmy's life in the future. Sarah ends her letter by expressing her endless love for Richard and Emmy. She says that deciding to send Emmy to Canada was not an easy choice for her, but she truly believes it is the best step for Emmy's future. Sarah asks Richard to trust the process for Emmy's sake. That is what motivates Richard to go to Canada, to fulfill Sarah's last wish and ensure Emmy receives the care she deserves. Although this decision is not easy for him and requires leaving his job behind, for Richard nothing is more important than doing what's best for his daughter. He even takes an extended leave from work, sacrificing a great deal of time so he can fully focus on taking care of Emmy in Canada. After arriving in Canada, Richard and Emmy face trouble when the GPS in their car suddenly stops working, making it difficult for Richard to find the correct route to their rental place.
Stay right there. I'm gonna go ask this guy for directions.
Richard steps out of the car to ask the locals for directions, while Emmy is told to stay inside. However, while Richard is talking to a local resident, Emmy quietly steps out of the car and walks toward a shop selling various artworks, books, and antiques. Fascinated, she begins taking photos of some antique items displayed in front of the store. Richard had given her a camera because he knows photography is one of her favorite hobbies. At first, Richard panics when he realizes that Emmy has suddenly disappeared. But once he spots her across the street, he quickly rushes over and brings her back into the car. After a long journey, Richard and Emmy finally arrive at the house they have just rented. The house is quite large and well-equipped, although it still lacks CCTV. Upon arrival, Emmy feels delighted when Richard gives her a new camera as a gift.
Whoa, one at a time.
Overwhelmed with excitement, Emmy's behavior starts to become excessive, which irritates Richard. Because of her developmental condition, Emmy often makes it difficult for Richard to manage and understand her needs. This becomes a real challenge for him, and Richard is forced to be extra patient when dealing with her. He still feels overwhelmed and unaccustomed to Emmy's behaviors, especially after Sarah's passing. Until now, it was always Sarah who understood and took care of every detail of Emmy's needs and desires. To help Emmy feel calmer and more comfortable, Richard gives her a lock of Sarah's hair. He also plays a video recording that shows happy moments they shared together with Sarah. Afterward, Richard steps away for a moment to make a phone call. Meanwhile, Emmy, who is sitting quietly, suddenly becomes intrigued after noticing something coming from one of the rooms. When Richard returns, he is confused to find that Emmy has suddenly disappeared. After searching all over the house, he discovers a dark corridor, and to his shock, he finds Emmy inside.
Gotta get out of there. Get your butt out here right now!
What startles Richard even more is one of the photos Emmy has taken. The image shows two glowing points resembling eyes staring directly at her. Not only that, but Richard also notices strange symbols carved into the foundation of the house.
There!
Before he can investigate further, Emmy suddenly shuts the door to the corridor, leaving the room in total darkness. Using only his phone's flashlight, Richard tries to find another way out.
Emmy, no, wait! Emmy!
Fortunately, he manages to escape through another exit that leads him back to the front of the house. The next day, Richard and Emmy visit Sandra's place, as requested by Sarah in her final letter. Their arrival is warmly welcomed by Sandra, who also expresses her condolences for Sarah's death. Richard feels relieved to receive support from Sandra during such a difficult time. Sandra then asks if there is anyone else helping Richard take care of Emmy. Sadly, Richard explains that his own parents have passed away, while Sarah's parents despise him, so there is no one else who can assist him in taking care of Emmy. Richard realizes that he is the only one who must fight for Emmy's recovery and well-being. Before starting Emmy's treatment process, Sandra asks Richard whether he has any history of taking medication. Richard feels slightly puzzled by the question, but he understands that Sandra must have a reason for asking. Sandra explains that the consumption of certain drugs can significantly affect unborn children and even cause developmental disorders. Richard admits that he has occasionally taken SSRI and Xanax, medications prescribed to help with his depression. He explains that he didn't take them frequently in the past, but after Sarah's death, he began to experience mild depression and needed to take both medicines regularly to manage his condition. After hearing his explanation, Sandra emphasizes the importance of transparency about medical and psychological history before beginning Emmy's treatment. Sandra then asks whether Richard's family has any history of mental illness, but Richard admits he has no idea. He later reveals that he was adopted as a child. Afterward, Sandra introduces an application that can greatly assist Richard in communicating with Emmy. The app allows Richard to interact more easily with her. By simply touching a picture on the screen, the app produces a corresponding voice.
I'm going to have you sign here and there. Picture. House.
Sandra also promises to visit Richard's home regularly to monitor Emmy's condition directly. This is a crucial step to ensure that Emmy's treatment progresses smoothly and according to plan. After explaining everything, Sandra invites Richard and Emmy to meet Dr. Helmond, a specialist with extensive experience treating patients with developmental disorders. The first step Dr. Helmond takes is installing a device designed for brain therapy. The purpose of this therapy is to stimulate Emmy's brain nerves so that she becomes more relaxed and her brain can function optimally.
Be difficult, Emmy. You need to slowly increase the signal as we can. What a fantastic...
The therapy must be done regularly and gradually to achieve the best possible results. On the way home, Emmy becomes interested in visiting again the same shop that sells various artworks, books, and antiques. For the second time, she starts taking pictures of the antique items displayed in front of the store. Richard then invites Emmy to go inside, after noticing a symbol on one of the books that looks similar to the one carved into the foundation of their house. Richard quickly asks the shop owner, a man named Albert, about the meaning of that symbol. After observing the drawing Richard shows him, Albert explains that the symbol represents an hourglass, which in modern terms is often interpreted as the sign of infinity. To confirm the exact meaning, Albert says he will ask a friend who works at the library. Surely there must be a book that explains it in more detail. He asks Richard to leave his phone number so he can contact him once he finds the information. While Richard and Albert are talking, Emmy accidentally drops a crystal inside the shop.
Damn it, Emmy! No, that's okay. It's fine. Serious.
Although the incident causes a small commotion, Albert, who understands Emmy's special condition, doesn't get upset. Instead, he patiently calms her down and assures Richard that it's not a big deal. With kindness, Albert gives Richard the crystal Emmy dropped, along with a book titled Your Indigo Child, free of charge. Unexpectedly, Albert tells Richard that Emmy might actually be an indigo child. He explains that indigo children possess strong energy and heightened sensitivity to their surroundings. They are born with unique abilities and a deep connection to the spiritual world. Albert adds that besides Emmy, he also senses a faint indigo aura from Richard himself, though not as strong as Emmy's. His words leave Richard stunned. It's the first time anyone has ever told him that he might be an indigo as well. After finishing their conversation, Richard takes Emmy home. She falls asleep on the way, and he carries her to her bedroom. When Richard tries to lock the door leading to the corridor where the strange symbol was found, something unusual suddenly happens. At first, he thinks Emmy has opened the door again, but when he checks her room, she suddenly screams loudly.
Open it! Open it! When?
Richard becomes confused as Emmy points toward a mirror.
It's okay. It's okay.
Feeling unstable after Sarah's death, Richard begins drinking heavily to ease the pain and emptiness he feels inside. One night, drunk and restless, he opens the book Albert gave him about indigo children. In it, he reads about several characteristics common among them, such as an attraction to crystals and stones, a fondness for animals, and the ability to see loved ones who have passed away. Reading this shocks Richard, as some of the descriptions perfectly match Emmy's behavior, especially her fascination with the crystal. Too drunk to stay awake, Richard suddenly falls asleep. When he wakes up, he is horrified to see Emmy pouring gasoline on his body, seemingly about to set him on fire, only to realize moments later that it was just a nightmare. He realizes his mental state is deteriorating and that the stress and grief have begun to manifest in disturbing dreams. The next day, it's time for another therapy session. As usual, Dr. Hellman attaches the devices to Emmy's head to stimulate her brain nerves, helping them relax and function optimally.
Fine, everything's normal. Yeah, well, it looks...
After the session, Dr. Hellman asks Richard whether he has tried using the communication app introduced earlier and how Emmy responded to it. Richard explains that Emmy shows little interest in the app and is only truly drawn to her camera. Anything that fascinates her, she photographs. Hearing this, Dr. Hellman advises Richard to keep encouraging Emmy to use the app so they can monitor her progress more accurately.
If they're there, we'll imagine reliving all those wonderful memories. As Sarah and I talked about this.
After returning from therapy, Emmy gives Richard a photo of some food, signaling that she is hungry.
Mr. Blue can't see like he loves you just like me. He drowns all he hears.
But when breakfast is served, Richard feels heartbroken as Emmy throws the food away without eating any of it. At first, he gets angry at her behavior, but he quickly realizes that moments like this are a true test of his patience. He forces himself to stay calm and understanding. To manage his emotions, Richard takes his medication to steady himself. When he goes to feed Emmy again, she suddenly runs out of the house. Richard rushes after her and is shocked to find Emmy climbing a cliff near their home. Worried for her safety, he climbs up to get her, but by the time he reaches the top, she has vanished. Richard panics, unable to comprehend how Emmy could disappear so suddenly. Then he looks down and sees Sandra already at the bottom with Emmy beside her. Confused and startled, Richard wonders how Emmy, who was just on top of the cliff, could have gotten down so quickly without him noticing. While climbing back down, Richard accidentally injures his head slightly. Sandra explains that she came only to check on Emmy's progress. After noticing that Emmy seems hungry, Sandra kindly prepares her some food.
Well, as part of the treatment, we
Sandwich.
I thought I had to let my child go.
During the third therapy session, Emmy prepares to undergo another series of treatments conducted by Dr. Hellman. The necessary devices are carefully attached to her head, and as the process begins, Emmy slowly starts recalling memories of her time with her mother. However, in the middle of the therapy, she suddenly experiences a nosebleed and instinctively hugs Richard, a sign, according to Dr. Hellman, that her emotional response and neural stimulation are showing improvement. He delivers the good news that the examination results reveal significant progress in Emmy's condition, meaning that the therapy is indeed having a positive effect. Despite the doctor's reassurance, Richard remains uneasy seeing Emmy's nosebleed, fearing that the procedure might actually be harming her. Even though Dr. Hellman explains in detail about the neurological improvements occurring in Emmy, Richard refuses to accept his reasoning. He becomes suspicious that Dr. Hellman is merely exploiting him for money. Suddenly, Richard receives a call from Albert, asking him to come to the shop immediately. Richard and Emmy quickly head there. Albert then tells the history of the area, how, back in 1887, the building was originally an orphanage that housed many children. A terrible tragedy occurred when a massive fire broke out, killing 46 children. The incident was caused by one of the orphans who deliberately set the building on fire in an attempt to kill a caretaker named Mr. Sumter. The child's act of vengeance was driven by Sumter's repeated acts of abuse toward the orphans. Realizing the dark past of the rental house, Richard asks Albert how to recognize the signs of a spirit trying to communicate with the living. Albert explains that spirits require a great amount of energy to connect with humans, and the easiest way for them to do so is often through dreams. He also adds that Emmy, being an indigo child with an exceptionally strong aura, has the potential to become a bridge between the human world and the spiritual realm. Alarmed by this revelation, Richard immediately takes Emmy home.
It takes a lot of energy to do that, you know? Your dreams will fill in what you don't know.
We gotta go.
Okay.
Emmy, let's go. Come on.
He spends the night rereading the Your Indigo Child book, searching for a deeper understanding of what being an indigo child truly means. He learns that indigo children are believed to possess a third eye, a metaphysical sense that connects the physical world with the unseen, allowing them to draw the attention of spiritual entities. Their unique ability can even open portals between the human and spirit worlds, enabling both realms to interact. Not wanting any harm to come to his daughter during her ongoing treatments, Richard decides to install 3 CCTV cameras throughout the house to monitor everything closely. That night, as Emmy sleeps, Richard finally manages to relax. But while checking the CCTV feed, he suddenly sees Emmy walking toward the corridor door. Richard rushes to her room, only to hear her screaming loudly.
Emmy!
And then wakes up in bed, realizing it was all just a nightmare. However, when he sits up, something feels off. His clothes, pants, and shoes are covered in dust and dirt, as if he had been walking through a filthy, abandoned place. Disturbed and confused, he checks the corridor again and discovers a dead cat lying there. At first, he assumes it must be Emmy's doing, until he checks the CCTV footage and is horrified to see himself as the one responsible. The next day, it's time for Emmy's scheduled therapy, so Richard brings her to Sandra's clinic. As usual, Dr. Helmond attaches the devices to her head. Thanks to the consistency of the treatments, Emmy shows remarkable improvement. She begins to remember her past memories with vivid clarity. But unexpectedly, Richard receives a call from his workplace. The caller informs him that his position is being replaced by someone else. The news devastates him, the stress overwhelms him, and in his frustration, he unintentionally lashes out at Emmy.
Stop that. What do you want? What do you want?
It hits him that he no longer has an income to cover Emmy's costly treatments. The realization crushes him completely. He must now face the harsh truth that he can no longer afford the therapy his daughter so desperately needs. In this moment of despair, Richard makes the painful decision to stop Emmy's treatment altogether. After returning home, Richard begins to descend into madness. He starts talking as if Sarah were still there with him.
Talk to me. What do you want me to do, Sarah?
Not only that, he begins taking an excessive amount of medication, far beyond what is safe. One night, in a dream, Richard sees Sarah again, but this time she appears in a terrifying form.
It's supposed to be like?
I'm right here.
When Richard wakes up, something unexpected happens. For the first time, Emmy communicates with him using the app recommended by Sandra and Dr. Helmond.
Happy.
Happy?
Play.
Through the app, she even invites Richard to go bike riding outside. Overjoyed, Richard feels an immense sense of relief and happiness. Emmy is finally communicating, even if only through the app. This drastic improvement convinces him that she no longer needs therapy sessions, believing that the treatment so far has already brought sufficient progress.
Hair. Brush.
Brush your own hair. Look at that.
However, after losing both Sarah and recently his job, Richard's behavior begins to grow more erratic. It's as if he can sense Sarah's presence around the house, even though he knows she's gone.
I got you a seat at the table, Richard.
One day, Richard takes Emmy to Albert's shop and tells him that he can feel his wife's spirit nearby. Determined to make contact, he asks Albert if there's a way to communicate directly with her. Initially, Albert offers him a Ouija board as one possible method to confirm whether it's truly Sarah or something else. But Albert warns him that often, evil entities disguise themselves as the spirits of loved ones, deceiving humans and causing chaos. Despite the warning, Richard insists that the spirit he feels truly is Sarah, not something malevolent. Wanting to protect him, Albert lies and says he doesn't have any books on spirit communication. However, Richard quickly realizes that Albert is not telling the truth. At that moment, another customer enters the shop, giving Richard the chance to secretly steal a book about how to contact the dead. After obtaining the book, Richard and Emmy rush back home. That evening, they hold a small celebration for Emmy's birthday. During the cheerful moment, Emmy presses a button on the communication app, and a robotic voice says, "Mom is here." The timing sends chills down Richard's spine.
Here.
I'll take care of this.
Just then, Sandra arrives at the house, unintentionally interrupting their small celebration. Agitated, Richard angrily drives her away, shouting for her not to interfere with his family.
You know you're under a lot of stress.
Why are you here?
Can I see her?
No, you're not her keeper. I said the treatment is over. Stay away from my family.
On her way back to her car, Sandra is startled to find Emmy suddenly sitting inside it, trying to communicate with her using the app. Over and over, Emmy presses the button that says, "Mom is here."
Emmy, what's wrong?
Mom, here.
Richard rushes out and catches Emmy in Sandra's car. He harshly pulls her out and scolds her, forbidding her from ever going near Sandra again. Emmy bursts into tears, frightened and confused by her father's anger. It becomes increasingly clear that Richard is losing his grip on reality. The weight of his grief over Sarah's death, the loss of his job, and the overwhelming responsibility of caring for Emmy alone have driven him to the edge. His growing obsession with the belief that Sarah's spirit is present in their home pushes him further into darkness. In his desperation to connect with what he believes to be Sarah's ghost, Richard begins performing dangerous rituals, even carving the mysterious symbol into his left hand with a heated knife. His fragile sanity makes him vulnerable to the dark influence of whatever presence he has invited, and now it whispers to him, feeding his obsession and driving him to the brink of complete madness. Sandra, meanwhile, pulls her car over to the side of the road, overwhelmed by sorrow. Richard's refusal to accept help devastates her. All she ever wanted was for Emmy to recover, to one day live a normal life and interact with others without barriers. As she wipes her tears, her attention is drawn to one of the photos Emmy took, a photo that shows Albert. Coincidentally, Sandra knows Albert quite well, so, without hesitation, she heads straight to his shop. When she arrives, she immediately asks Albert if he knows Richard and Emmy. Albert explains that he does, since they have visited his shop several times. Hearing this only deepens Sandra's concern, so she asks why they had been coming to him. Albert then recalls the last time Richard visited. He remembers how strangely Richard behaved, specifically when he asked for a book about communicating with spirits. But as Albert turns to check his shelves, he suddenly realizes the book is missing. Shocked, he concludes that Richard must have stolen it while he was distracted. Something is terribly wrong. Richard's attempt to contact the dead suggests he is no longer in control of himself. Albert urges Sandra to stop him before things become even more dangerous. Alarmed, Sandra rushes to Richard's house.
I gotta go.
I hope Blue's gonna be all right.
Her fears are confirmed. Richard is preparing to perform a ritual intended to let him communicate with Sarah again. With Emmy's heightened sensitivity as an indigo child, he believes the ritual will succeed. When Richard sees Sandra approaching the house, he deliberately lures her toward the corridor.
Richard! Emmy!
The moment she steps inside, Richard plans to trap her there and carry out his intention to kill her.
Okay, Emmy is getting better!
Sorry.
But before he can finish what he started, Richard sees Emmy slip out through another door. Forced to abandon Sandra, he chases after Emmy to continue the ritual. Emmy runs swiftly through the trees, cleverly leading Richard toward a deep, pitch-black ravine. In the darkness, Richard cannot see clearly. He slips, falls into the ravine, and the impact breaks his leg. He loses consciousness instantly.
Emmy! Come on, it's time to go home. Emmy! Stay there!
One year later, the story shows Emmy and Sandra visiting a psychiatric facility to check on Richard's condition. During that time, Sandra has lovingly taken care of Emmy and ensured she receives regular therapy, helping her continue to grow and develop. Emmy can now even call Richard Dad.
And she loves you just like me.
Daddy.
Lives deep within.
Keeper.
But Richard's mental illness has progressed severely. He has lost the ability to speak entirely. He sits silently, trapped within his own mind. And with that, the story ends.